Welcome, everyone, to today's show. We have with us Dr. Jaban Moore. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we actually, we're sitting here chatting before we even get started, and the topic of mold comes up. And I know you are an absolute mold expert. You were just sharing a little bit about even finding mold in your own home.
Yeah. I had a completely gutted, nothing in my basement kind of basement in Kansas City, Missouri, where, so just concrete floors. And I walked down there one day and I'm like, why is there water on my floor in my basement? So I know what's above it, which is my shower. And we had a custom shower put in, and I'm just going to brag a little. I have a red light panel that I built into the tile wall because I love red light. But so I knew how it was built is really what I'm getting to. And I knew where this drip was going. I could see the screw it was coming off of. I'm just looking at it going, crud. There it is. I just put this brand new shower in, new tile, everything. And no matter what knowledge you have in mold, at some point there's going to be water in your house. I don't care where you live. I don't care if you're in Scottsdale, Arizona in the desert, or if you're in Florida. If you have water inside your home, inside the walls, you can absolutely have mold. And I know that's a misnomer. People are always telling me like, well, I don't really live in a place where you'd have a lot of mold. I'm like, do you have water in your home? They're like, yeah. I go, well, that's all you need.
I actually just had the exact same experience. I was sitting there and luckily my HVAC backed up. And as I'm looking where the air return is, and I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona, it was like 104 degrees that weekend. And I was like, something is off. And I found a drain in my bathroom and the PVC, the black pipe had cracked. And the entire, all the way underneath my bathroom cabinet into my HVAC air return area had been wet for who knows how long. So started finding mold. Middle of Scottsdale, 104 degrees.
Just because you live in a desert does not mean there's not mold, unfortunately. And when I hear stories like that, I'm just going, okay, well, before we jump to conclusions, get too scared, because who knows how long it's been? We don't know. This is when one, obviously fix the main problem. And if you see mold, if you're visually seeing mold, just don't go in there with some power tool and start chopping at it, because that's going to send spores flying everywhere. But if you don't see any mold, then definitely just fix the problem. Don't bring in some contractor that just, I see this all the time, because as much as those guys are good at some things, typically mold is not their expertise. And we want to make sure that not only do we solve the problem, that anywhere that moldy water went, it gets dried out correctly, depending upon materials of your home and all the other things. You just need to be testing. And then once you think you're done, wait 6 months and then go run a dust sample test later, which is called an ERMI test. This is a dust sample collection, and it's just checking the dust through the home. And if you do it correctly, it can be really accurate if you have a good person read it. It can be a little overwhelming, so I do recommend having a person read it that is used to those kind of tests. But they're fairly low cost, and they're going to give you the, are we in the clear or not, that you really want.
So is that what you advise for people that can't necessarily work with you directly, or maybe you're listening to this? Where would you even say they start? Because they get so overwhelmed when they come across something like this.
Yeah, I mean, if you come across mold, the first thing is every house has a little bit of mold. Once you can visibly see the mold, it's no longer just a little mold. It's not just like a few thousand colonies. It's usually like 100,000 to 1 million colonies of molds in that visible piece. Where water gets sucked into sheetrock or flooring, it doesn't just go right there where it was on it. It actually usually spreads at least 2 foot out from that. From the last spot, you can see dampness. You then have to go 2 foot out. So what I would say is if you find mold in your home, first of all, you're going to be cutting at least 2 foot away beyond that when you're doing it properly for the proper remediation company. But you do want to get testing, and you do not want to call your standard real estate mold inspectors, because those guys' job is to approve your house to be sold. It's not to find mold that could potentially harm your health. And there's a big difference of who's paying them and what the outcomes are going to be and their expertises. So I use building biologists and environmental scientists. There's a lot of good ones out there. Look for like your local mold group on Facebook. Go in there and ask who's been good and not. That's one of the best ways I've found. They're not going to be cheap because they're going to do a good job. They're going to spend a whole day in your house. They're going to run dust samples, moisture meters, thermal cameras. They're going to do all of this in your home. But if you are working with somebody that understands how to run at-home testing like an ERMI, you can do that. But when you said, if they can't work with me, I don't know that I would run an ERMI, because the interpretation of that test, there's, I don't even know, 40 different mold categories on the first page, the first logarithm, and then there's another 10, 15 on the second. And then those are weighted against each other. But you also simply just need to know each individual line and how many spores are acceptable, which it does not tell you. So you do need to work with somebody if you're going to use that kind of testing. If not, hire a professional to come check your home. Make sure they're a building biologist. I've recorded a podcast with Pure Health Mold. That's a company that does proper remediations that I've vetted. And you can watch that podcast on my YouTube channel. And I did that on purpose because I wanted my own clients to be able to go watch that. And I will link it in their notes. I'm like, look, make sure the guy that you hire does something like this.
And what are you noticing? What are like some of the symptoms that people might be noticing if there is mold in their house that they should be aware of?
So I'll give you the symptoms and I'm going to give you a little complexity behind it. So the average symptom we think of is breathing, asthma, maybe a little bit of rashes, some histamine responses, redness in your face and ears. Those are the ones that people associate to mold. But mold is a massive, massive, massive toxin. And I can't even say a toxin to what specific part of your body, because there are so many different types of molds and mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are the spores. When they release their toxin, it is a mycotoxin. So that's mold toxin. And there are 29 I can run on a Vibrant America mold panel test. So there's at least 29 that are commonplace that are being released out. And when those get in your body, each one attacks different areas. So some the liver, some the kidneys. But for many of the ones they don't think about is your brain. So they're neurotoxic. And by neurotoxic, I mean you get inflammation in your brain, which leads to anxiety, depression, irritability. You might have OCD or tics. You're going to be tired for sure. I watch people come in and I just patterns are something I love. So I saw so many people coming in with mold that also are running organic acid tests from Mosaic Laboratories. And what I would see is their actual mitochondrial markers, or Krebs cycle, and their beta oxidation, which is carbs and fat, your ability to make those into energy, they'd be suppressed. There'd be issues with them. So I'm like, man, the number one thing that I can see out of Lyme, parasites, EBV, radioactive elements, heavy metals, mercury, all these things, the number one thing that just corrupts your ability to make energy was mold. So then when you ask me what do people experience, I'm like, well, anything that requires energy doesn't work right. Brain fog, fatigue, recovery. You end up with dysautonomia type symptoms, which means you might stand up and feel like you're woozy, which they'll call orthostatic hypertension, which that is the diagnosis, but what's causing it? You could have POTS. So there's so many symptoms associated. And the worst part about mold, I think, and there's so many bad parts about mold, but the worst one is it's immunosuppressive. It's been actually used to be the precursor formula for drugs to stop you from rejecting your transplant organs. So it shuts down your immune system. When you shut down your immune system, now what happens?
Everything else comes to the surface.
Everything else comes to the surface. So that EBV that 96% of the population has comes out of hiding. Lyme disease from the tick you got bit with when you were 3, but you're 40 now and you never had symptoms, comes out of hiding. SIBO, Candida, H. pylori, like all of these infections start coming to the surface. So people will come to me and they're like, man, I've been to every doc. I've treated everything under the sun. And I'm like, wow, they did some really amazing technique stuff, right? Like I agree with, that's a great protocol for Lyme, and that's a great protocol for parasites, and that's a great protocol for EBV. But I go, did anybody talk to you about the fact that you have mold growing inside your body and there's a bunch of mycotoxins coming out? No.
How often do you see that? How often are they missing it?
A lot. I mean, the number of clients that come to me that even have treated mold, but no one just said, hey, you need to run a test in your home. Or they reran a mold test and saw that the markers weren't coming down and then said, we're missing something. That's probably some of the bigger problems. I think mold's getting out there in popularity, at least in the functional medicine ranks. So people will be like, oh, well, we got to do a binder protocol. I'm like, well, that's good, but binders are only part of it. Binders bind a toxin. But if you have an organism growing in your body, which mold can, or you're still living, working, going to church, or driving a vehicle that has mold in it, you're just going to run into this battle forever. And I got a story. I've got a client that was in Kenya. And the guy, I mean, he really wanted to get well. And I ran an ERMI on his place because we weren't having the success I wanted to have. And it's a little harder when you're working with somebody in Africa to get certain things to them. So we eventually got an ERMI done, and it came back at 5,000 particles of Aspergillus paniculoides. And this is where I was saying, like, it matters that I know that 5,000 is a problem, because it tells you that that is a problem, but it doesn't scream it out on just a regular ERMI. And I want you below 200. He could not get better no matter what he tried, because we tried peptides, we tried over-the-counter meds, we tried prescription meds with a medical doctor in his country. We tried all of the things, and none of them touched his symptoms while he was still living in all that mold. So you've got to figure out how to get to the root of things, remove the barriers that won't let you get well. And then after that, after you get through that part, all these other organisms and toxins that I've talked about here, yeah, you still got to do it right, but they're not impossible anymore. I remember when Lyme, I used to be like, man, that's like a tough thing. Now I'm going, man, if all you got's Lyme, awesome.
Mm-hmm. So where do you start when you're dealing with so many of these complex scenarios and patients that are really hard that no one else can figure out? Where do you typically like to start?
I mean, I could say the statement that all functional medicine doctors will say, which is history, which is true, but it's so much more than just like looking at, well, where did you get sick? And then going from there. It's a person has a full spectrum of experiences. And I'm looking for every possible burden that they've ran into. That burden could be childhood trauma. And while everybody's listening right now, I want you to think about yourself as a bank account for energy. Like I talked about mitochondria earlier, talked about mold affecting it. So I'm going to take us down that sort of thought process. So if you have $100 to spend every single day, and 50 of that is just simply being alive. Like it's your basal metabolic rate. It's the amount of calories you burn while sleeping. But if that's 50 calories or dollars of your 100 just for being alive, and then you spend 20 on your job and 10 on your family and 10 on childhood trauma and 10 on mold and 5 on a parasite and 5 on Lyme disease and 6 on the PTA board and another 5 on your neighbor that keeps throwing a fit about your fence. Where are we at? We're bankrupt. So of course you can't exercise without having exercise intolerance. Of course you can't do anything you want to do and you have no motivation to get stuff done and you just don't feel right. So I go back and look for every burden that I can possibly find, whether it's trauma, toxin, infection. I had a woman last week that had 5 miscarriages. And when she told me that, and I said, wow, that's really heavy. I was like, I'm so sorry. I said, that's a burden that you carry. She just like starts bawling. But I go, okay, well, now I know we need to do, and I'm not a therapist, but I know we need to get you with doing some nervous system work to help you let go of some of that burden, because it's affecting her physiologically just by the fact we saw her cry. And then other parts of it are, sometimes when you've lived in certain experiences, whether that's, a woman I know, her childhood custody when she was a kid was 1 day at each parent's. It goes back and forth. I'm like, there was no stability. So she constantly lives in a feeling of instability. So now she wants control. So everything has to be a certain way. We call that A-type, or maybe she's not OCD, but some people might jokingly call it that, or perfectionistic. That's a lot of energy spent in a personality type. You can be a great employee. Shoot, I would love to have people that are really A-type on my team, but it takes energy. So when I talk to my clients, I'm talking about What is taking energy from you on a day-to-day basis that is not allowing you to succeed? So I go back in the history, do all that, but then it's air, food, water, hygiene, dental, implants. We got to rule out all of those things because I can't necessarily get to and be successful with Lyme if you have any of those things that have a major issue in them.
So when your first one, which is probably, it's becoming trendier to talk about, childhood trauma and your nervous system dysregulation, how is it that, one, how do you approach that with patients? And then where do you take them to actually, like you said, you're not a therapist, but when that is something that is coming to the surface, how do you support them through that?
Well, I feel like my job is to sit with someone, take in everything they've got going on, and figure out an order of operations. So yes, it's currently trendy for nervous system. It was trendy for mold 2 or 3 years ago. It was trendy for Lyme before that, and EBV before that, right? And it's always going to change, and it's always moving. The problem is a lot of practitioners these days, they just get on the trend. They get really excited about it. That's the way they go. They forget everything else. So for me, I tried to do my best to not forget about everything else because there's a reason why those things trended. And I just add. So then my note and my paperwork and just the way that I operate starts to become this big checklist of don't forget to check the box of, did you look for that? Are they clear of this? So with nervous system, how do I approach it? I think everybody's a little different. There are some people that are just like, yeah, no, okay, I'll go do what you recommended. Limbic, somatic, vagal nerve exercises. Because again, I'm not a therapist, but I think the exercises, the way I approach that statement is, I want you to do physical therapy for your brain. It's not that I can fix necessarily the thing that happened. No different than if you tear your ACL, you're not just going to magically snap your fingers and that's better. You have to have something replaced or sew it back together, and then you have to rehabilitate the way you walk. Well, if you went through a traumatic event, you're still here, so you've survived it. Let's make sure it's not still going. Those are conversations sometimes you have to have, and those are really hard ones, especially if that person's a loved one in in your life. But to be frank, most people that come into my office don't still have that going on. I think by the time they've gone through all the education and gotten to my social medias, they've probably, hopefully started taking steps in a direction. But then it's, okay, now you have this stress response in your body. And one thing I'll say is the body's really, really good at adapting to survive. It's awful at fixing the adaptation to go back to being optimal. And an example of this is you see people all the time that like throw out their back and they kind of lean to the side or they walk funny. They still do that for years after the injury's gone. And you have to go back to rehab to fix it. So that's why I keep using that terminology is you need to do the limbic work, which is exercises for your brain, somatic work, which is reframing things, and a number of other things, vagus nerve exercises to connect your brain to your gut with a specific nerve that can get into a freeze state. If you can get that shifted, although I still think for many people, therapy can be a great tool, that shift takes the fight or flight off of your body. And in many of my clients, it's actually the part that everybody leaves off, which is freeze, that doesn't allow them to come out of the state they're in and actually progress forward.
Have you used homeopathy as well with any of those types of cases?
Absolutely. Those cases are the ones that need it the most. So when it comes to homeopathy, this is something that in my, basically my residency, we called it a preceptorship in chiropractic school. When I was doing that, I went and shadowed a doc in Wichita, Kansas, and I got to spend 3 or 4 months in the same office where he moved. He actually, which I'm glad I'm graduated and I'm past school now, I left his clinic all the time and went over to a homeopath clinic. That was a gentleman that had been trained at a homeopathic school, and I'm talking like the 60s, 70s. So he had every individual homeopathic remedy. Mm-hmm. None of them were mixed. It was singulars. And he was teaching me how to do it the old school way, mix it, succuss it. And why that's important now is when you're getting into emotional realm, when you're getting into mold and mast cell, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, multiple chemical sensitivities. I mean, I could give you all these abbreviations out there, or simply just a high ACE score, which is a high trauma score. These individuals often are really reactive to treatment. Give them a cholestyramine for mold binding, it's not going to go well. Give them an antimicrobial, it's not going to go well. Shoot, give them a B vitamin half the time, it's not going to go well. So you bring homeopathy in, and not because it's less powerful, because it doesn't have proteins in it, because it's more energetic medicine, and the body recognizes and knows what to do, but it doesn't have the protein that'll trigger an allergic or immunoglobulin style reaction. So now you can start moving the needle with them on a lot of different fronts. So we were talking about trauma. You can use remedies for trauma. And I use several of those from DesBio. I'll use different ones. I mean, shoot, I remember when I was going through a breakup with a business partner, and I was given Rage, and I was given a couple of other ones, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take a few of these. I need to calm down. I'm a little upset right now. But homeopathy can just take the edge off. It can help move the needle. And for those really sensitive people, it can be powerful for emotions, but you can also use detox remedies that can be powerful. And then, I honestly like a lot of homeopathy, even for viruses. So I'll use a lot of that for viruses too. So whether it's like the ESTP kit, that kit is a game changer when it comes to viruses. Dr. Jess Petros is a friend of mine. She put me on this. She's like, you've got to start muscle testing and try this. I'm like, all right. I add another thing to my e-store. So I try it out. I'm like, okay, fine. You're right. So it's always fun, because whether it's homeopathy or something else, it's just like, there's so much to choose from, and it's trying to figure out when to use these tools. And I mean, if you're listening, you're a practitioner or you're a sensitive individual, and so either you're working with sensitive or you are sensitive, homeopathy is usually my start place.
Really?
For those individuals. It's homeopathy, antihistamines, anti-inflammatories, whether those be natural over the counter or sometime prescription with my medical team. And I want to stay natural. I would love that. But for some of these individuals, they're just in a bad spot.
The heavy hitters. Sometimes
you got to stack them. We'll have like 8 different things that they're on. We'll have homeopathy with herbs, with meds. And I'm just like, okay, throw some peptides on top of that. I'm like, is your body ready yet? And I'm like, finally, yes, symptoms are coming down. We can give you something without you having an entire histamine reaction, which a lot of people call it Herx reactions. And since we're on this topic, if you have a client come in and you give them a drop of a homeopathic or a granule of a binder or a granule of anything, and they have a reaction, that is not a Herxheimer reaction. That is a histamine response. That is an immune modulated response. It can be the nervous system. I've had people where, their spouse would put stuff in their water with their permission, and they wouldn't have a reaction. But when they did, they had a reaction. So I'm like, that is nervous system and immune modulated. That is not a Herx.
That's fascinating. Because I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, can I just put these in my spouse's water or something like that? So very interesting.
I'm not saying I recommend that.
Yeah.
But when the client came up with it and her spouse was on board for it, I was just like.
But then when he did it himself, he would respond.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's absolutely a neurological response for people that are sensitive because they're afraid of it. And they'll admit it many times. But there's also there's something going in my body. I know that in the past I've reacted. So the fight, flight, freeze comes out, generates an immune response. And here we are.
So with that, since we're, some people might say that we're kind of going into the woo here, what would you believe practitioners who are not using any form of energetic medicine or our supplementation alone, what would they maybe be missing, or what do you like about using energetic medicine?
I'll just say it like this. I had a acupuncturist, mentor, teacher, back when I was going through school. He was a World Health Organization recognized Doctor of the Year, Richard Yenny. He was a translator at the World War II trials, learned acupuncture in Japan, Like the guy was incredible. He had so much life experience. In his class, he's like, look, if I have a stick and if I shook it over your head and you got better, I don't care as long as you get better. So first of all, if you're a doctor and you're not trying things just to see, like just, if you've heard about energetic medicine, herbal medicine, prescription medicine, and you're not open to whatever helps your person that you're working with get better, you're doing a disservice to your clients. Now, if every client's gotten better, then whatever, but that's not the way it works, because I know as a practitioner, when you get people better, they send people that are worse. They just keep getting more complicated. You're like, oh my goodness, I didn't think that was possible.
You must be good if you're just dating all these chronic infections now. You're getting the worst of the worst. So you must have had a lot of good outcomes thus far.
We have. And I think part of the secret to that is I'm just open. I learn from my clients every day. Like, hey, I took this, I felt better. Okay, well, let's figure out the mechanism behind it. And that happens with homeopathic. That happens when somebody calls me and tells me I took this SSR kit and my Epstein-Barr symptoms went down. Well, did you do anything else with that? What other variables did you have? Have you tried anything else? What happened in your life? Nothing has changed. All right, well, I've got to think that that's a possible reason why. Okay, well then let's try it with some other people, not give them any necessarily context of what symptoms are going to get better, but like I recommend we use this and then go down that path. And I do that all the time. And I run before tests and I run after tests. We take symptoms before, we take symptoms after. I am so much of I want to be a scientist when it comes to the way I practice. In my notes, you have to fill out all of your symptoms every appointment, which is roughly once a month. And I don't actually publicize that to you to where you can see it when you're filling them out on purpose. And I tell them not to go back and look because I want to get a non-biased response. And then I show it to them on the screen and they're like, oh, wow, I am succeeding. I am getting better. Or in some cases I'm not. And then I'm going, what's going on? What changed? And she, I went on vacation. I ate some food. I didn't react well to it. I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. Or this last time I had a gentleman come in and he's like, yeah, we're launching a restaurant and I worked 85 hours the last 3 weeks. I'm like, well, no wonder you feel worse. Mm-hmm. But I try to run my practice where I'm learning from every recommendation that I give. And what I see is energetic medicine is a very functioning, very effective way to help people. And if you want to call it placebo because you don't like it, but it worked, I don't really care. It's changing lab values, which is part of the standard of how you see medicine work and get judged. So that's why I do that too.
Couple of random rapid fire type questions for you as we wrap up. Knowing that you have a little boy that's 3 now, what is one thing that you teach him or instill in him that others might think is out of the box?
On my way here, flew in, went to get a rental car. We are outside waiting for the rental car. He picks up a rock and starts throwing at a bigger rock. You're like, where is this going? He missed. I said, that's okay, buddy. We're always going to fail at some point as long as we learn from it. So he threw again, missed. I said, keep trying. What'd you do with your arm that time? Can you change the way you moved to hit the rock? He's 3, right? So he's like, well, he kind of did this thing. So then he like way outside. And then the next time he goes overhanded and he hits it. And I'm like, as long as you learn from your failures, we're going somewhere.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a real good one. I think we've had like a culture of perfectionism for a long time. That's pretty deeply engraved. Let's see, another one for you. What's one thing that is trending right now that you just think is just complete BS?
Oh, I was talking to a client this week and she comes in with her branched chain amino acids. So valine, isoleucine, leucine, bottomed out. Her HDL bottomed out. This was on a test called an MVX test, and it was a big study done to create this test. And if you have above a 63, your likelihood of dying in the next 5 years, your mortality is high. So I ran this test on her. She was a 64. She's a 41, 2-year-old woman, somewhere in there. I'm trying to remember. And I was just like, what's going on? I've been doing the medical medium diet. I was like, yeah. And I did have her track before she gets to my appointment, her caloric intake with macros. 10% protein, like 5 to 10% fat, the rest carbs. And I just looked at her. I go, well, not only from these markers, your liver markers, your kidney markers, your thyroid markers, you have to start eating protein and fat.
Yeah.
You cannot do a fruitarian diet. It does not work long term. I know it can make you feel good short term, and it did for her. For a few months, it felt good. I'm like, your body's wasting away. We've got to fix this.
Months? She'd been doing it for months?
Months.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's always funny to see. There's always some trend, right? Back, it was the Master Cleanse diet before that one. It's just like with these people, I don't know how they get hooked into it.
You know, she's been unwell and she'd been struggling for a while. She tried a number of things and hadn't had success. And she did feel better on the diet at the beginning, right? And I give that to her. And I give that to going to a vegan, vegetarian, fruitarian diet. There's almost no effort to digest fruits. Like there's very, very little. It's not going to be heavy on you. You don't have to burn the fat through ketosis or through the beta oxidation portion of your mitochondrial process to make fat into energy. You don't have to break down the proteins. So there's definitely like a relief, just like fasting, there can be a relief to your body. And, you know, if you're eating organic, everything and juicing it down and you're not having to process the food, like I get it. There's an initial feel good. I'm not saying I recommend it. I just get it. And then, you know, she went for a few months and then didn't really see results. So she was going on forums. They're like, well, you got to really like get perfect with it. And she still had a few cheats. So then she went like a level 2, like super trying because she just wants to be well. And these people are telling her that will do it. And I was really fortunate that I had ran labs before she came to this call because she was very passionate about this diet and she was an intelligent woman. And I had found colonizing mold in her body, a significant amount of it. And I was just like, this is why you haven't gotten better before. I can probably guarantee it. She even had an ERMI test ran before me.
And they didn't catch it.
I don't know if anyone else read it. I think she ran it because I talked about it and she just ordered it because she knew she was coming in. I still work in clinic and still see patients most of the week. So like I've got a lot of them in there and I'm trying to recall this exact case, but yeah, I was just like, this is a big reason why you're not getting better. And if this has been missed for the last 3-4 practitioners, it makes sense. And I was like, you do not have to go to a 30% protein diet day one, but I think we need to start heading back that way. You don't even have to do it from animal meat. We still need protein and fat in your diet. Like, let's walk our way back in it because she was uncomfortable because she called eating, you know, vegan a religion is where her feeling on it was when she was in some of the forums. And I was just like, I understand. I'm not trying to question what you're doing. And I know vegans that have gotten well working with me, but you need protein and fat. I can show you the markers in your labs. This is not this is not a thought. This is not a preference. This is not a bias. Here's your labs.
It's rough. Yeah. Luckily it's trending back up to, you know, we went through the paleo, like when I was first in the industry 20 years ago, and it's definitely making its muscle centric medicine and protein leading the charge lately again, luckily. But
I think everybody just has to figure out that social media summits and every other form of marketing that I'm guilty of too, where we go out and we post things on social media that we're trying to educate about what we're learning about. But there's a lot of people that get really passionate about being controversial in an area versus here's the reality. All of these diets have a place and a time for the most part. And someone just has to know when to use them. There's a place for histamine and autoimmune and oxalate. There's a place for all of these types of diets, but not forever. The diet forever is whole food and organic, balanced macros, and eat enough.
Well, I appreciate you coming by and sharing your wisdom and about mold and all the other topics. And how is it that people can get in touch with you, or if somebody's listening and they're really curious about mold, is there like one one place you would send them that you feel like gives them the best information?
Honestly, just go to wherever you like to go as a person, whether it's a website, Instagram, Facebook,
And what do you
YouTube,
offer?
TikTok.
What about for you though? Because you're on all those places.
I'm on all of them. So just look up Jab as in boy, AN, Moore, Dr. Jaban Moore. I'm on all of them. We put stuff out every single day because when I was sick and I had Lyme and mold, I'm old now, right? Like pre social media boom. It was like 2012. You couldn't just type in Lyme disease and mold into your browser of Instagram and find somebody that did much. So it took me a long time, it took years to find someone that was actually capable of helping me. So my goal is just to shorten that process for people.
Amazing. Yeah. And you have a couple of talks with Des Bio for those that are practitioners listening in, that they can tune in and learn more. You'll be speaking even at our conference. So we'll make sure we get those recordings out for everyone. But thank you, everyone, for joining us and being here today for the show. We'll see you on the next episode.